Howdy everyone, my name is Raymond Arturo Perez and this is day 4. Is graduate film school worth it? I have been going on live for the past 3 days to go over different parts of my journey here in Los Angeles as a writer, director, producer, production accountant, etc. And today I'll be continuing that live series by talking about graduate school and whether or not it's worth it. But before I do, I think the audio got cut off yesterday, so I wanted to cover a little bit about what got cut off. I was discussing the importance of networking and how pretty much every film school is represented here in Los Angeles, from the University of North Carolina to Texas A&M to UT Austin, hook 'em. There are folks in the industry from your university, and when you see another person from your city, from your campus, from your state, it's like this. So highly recommend that you stay connected with your alma maters because it's very, very important. And like we have been discussing over the last few days, it's so much about who you know. So why not activate the different networks that you're already a part of? Today we're going to talk about graduate film school. Just in case you don't know, you don't really need higher education to have success in this industry. It really is about who you know. So you don't need to go to undergrad, you don't need to go to graduate school. But as I mentioned yesterday, I'm very biased. I'm very team higher education. I think the more education under your belt, the more networks that you're a part of, the better you are equipped to succeed in this industry. So why did I go to graduate school? I went to AFI Conservatory, or the American Film Institute, and I went back because I was in year 3 of Los Angeles, and I had 3 years under my belt of jumping from different jobs here in Los Angeles, primarily functioning in production accounting, working my way up that ladder, which we can go into detail on a later date. But I was recognizing, as I was continuing to do writers groups, which I've mentioned in previous lives, and networking both horizontally with folks at my level as well as above and below, that while my writing was getting better, the change was so small in its increments that I felt like I really needed to press the gas on my writing and on my craft. And so I really thought that graduate school would be a great investment in me and in my writing, because 2 years of committing to writing, I knew that at the end of those 2 years, I would be able to see the effects in my scripts. So I was also aware, having gone to undergrad and knowing that private schools and institutions I was looking at are very, very expensive, that I needed to have a criteria for which programs I would consider for screenwriting specifically. So I was going to go get my master's in screenwriting from one of these 4 institutions. It was going to be AFI, UCLA, USC, or NYU. And I thought at that time that those 4 programs had some of the best screenwriting programs in the nation, if not the world. And the criteria that I was looking at, the reason why I had those 4 institutions on my list, were because of the name recognition, the portfolio I would get out of the program, the recent success of Alumni Network, and that the faculty were currently working professionals in the industry. So I knew that when they were going to talk shop and when they were going to talk about their experiences navigating through the industry, that those stories would be present day and not 10 years ago. So let's talk about name recognition. I felt that in those 3 years that I've been bouncing around different odd jobs, that the institutions that I saw most represented were USC and UCLA. And honestly, I felt like it was USC more often than not. I felt like there were a lot of USC folks at every job that I've been in, or whenever I would communicate with folks at a different company, or production company, network, studio, what have you. There was always some USC person there, and usually that meant there were also other USC people there. And I was like, okay, so that's a name that means something, that carries weight, that has representation in the industry, and that matters. And I would say, though not at the same number, that I saw UCLA, NYU, and AFI often represented at a very, very high level in comparison to any other institution. That's not to say that UT Austin wasn't represented. That's not to say that other institutions weren't represented, but I felt like those were the names that were coming across my eyeballs and the folks that I was meeting more often than not. 2, portfolio. With 3 years under my belt, I also recognize that the most important thing as a writer are your samples. And that was what I was trying to break my back, trying to compensate for when I moved out here. So on top of a 9 to 5 or whatever the time frame was, as soon as I clocked out, I was working on that sample. And I knew if I went to graduate school, I needed samples by the time I graduated. USC, UCLA, NYU, and AFI at the time were very adamant that you would have a solid portfolio upon graduating from their graduate school programs. Number 3 was recent success with their alumni. And I felt at that time, UCLA and AFI were like kicking a ton of ass. Like the alumni from USC and AFI in the screenwriting programs were like top notch. If you were hearing a younger writer succeed, they were often coming from UCLA's program or AFI's program. I think before that little blip or that era, USC was the juggernaut. And then lastly, working faculty in the industry. And I felt like, again, all 4 programs had a pretty good representation of their faculty, both working in the industry in some capacity or in independent cinema in some capacity. NYU also, as a side note, seemed very, very insular in terms of like they were working within the studio system and outside the studio system in a very, very intense way, which I thought was also really remarkable. NYU also had stage or writing for the theater as part of their program, so that was also something that I found very interesting and exciting. And I think the thing that was like an outlier, something that I wasn't necessarily paying attention to because I didn't know to pay attention to, it really has nothing to do with you or any action that you're making. It's just kind of happenstance, is the quality of your cohort. And I felt like I lucked out when I went to AFI in that my cohort was just about their business. They're a little older, a little bit more seasoned. They had more lived experiences. They had some work experience in the industry. And so you knew that when you came into a workshop format, that it was time to go. You were looking to do better for yourself, but you were also looking to challenge the person to your left and to your right of you. So I thought that was something that I couldn't really foresee, but felt really real. Ultimately, these programs are very, very expensive. As I mentioned last time, there's always scholarship money, especially for folks who do not come of means. I recommend that you start out by asking for money, you follow up by asking for more money, and if you feel the nerve, I would say even more so than that. There is always money available, and if you come from a voice that is underrepresented in the industry, I think you should feel that much more encouraged to say that your voice is missing. And this program is literally setting you up to succeed so that your voice can be heard upon graduating. How I feel like I've put a lot of attention to these 4 programs, USC, UCLA, NYU, AFI, but I also have spoken with mentees, with colleagues who've gone to graduate school and did not go to these programs. And I will say that, as I mentioned earlier, 2 years of investment in your writing, regardless of where you go, is going to show in your writing. And if you get, all your tuition paid for, plus room and board at some program that I did not mention, and there are many amazing writing programs outside of the ones that I've mentioned, that's 2 years that you get to invest in your writing, and it'll show. It'll show because you're not spending time at your 9 to 5 working in accounting, and then very tired, going home, and then trying to write more. And so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of graduate school for me. If you have any additional questions on graduate school, absolutely reach out. Happy to go more in depth, but that was what my decision making was in terms of going to graduate school for screenwriting. Thanks.